We thank God for His goodness to us and allowing us to come together tonight to worship Him in spirit and in truth. I think you have observed that after the elections, the real motives of people who supported the candidates are becoming clearer. Naging maliwanag yung intention, yung motive ng mga tao, why they supported some leaders. In fact, even before the election, someone approached me and said, "Pastor, ito talaga ang susuportahan natin para kung mananalo ito, hihingi tayo." Ayun, di ba? May mga ganong klaseng motive. And in fact, you hear people being disappointed. Pwede ba, huwag mo i-adjust, nahirapan ako sa sound. Some people are disappointed because they did not get what they were expecting to get from the candidate. And so we notice that there are different motives why people are supporting certain candidates. And tonight I would want to emphasize on the importance of trying to look into our motives, because this is something that will really be effective in our own lives. I want us to look into an Old Testament passage in the book of Joshua. Kindly open your Bibles to the book of Joshua, chapter 9. And I'll be reading the entire chapter so that we will have a picture of what happened here. And I would like to emphasize certain things from this passage later on. Joshua chapter 9, verses 1 to 27. It says here, "Now when all the kings west of the Jordan heard about these things, the kings in the hill country, in the western foothills and along the entire coast of the Mediterranean Sea, as far as Lebanon, the kings of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, they came together to wage war against Joshua and Israel. However, when the people of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they resorted to a ruse. They went as a delegation whose donkeys were loaded with worn-out sacks and old wineskins, cracked and mended. They put worn and patched sandals on their feet and wore old clothes. All the bread of their food supply was dry and moldy. Then they went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal and said to him and the Israelites, 'We have come from a distant country. Make a treaty with us.' The Israelites said to the Hivites, 'But perhaps you live near us, so how can we make a treaty with you?' 'We are your servants,' they said to Joshua. But Joshua asked, 'Who are you and where do you come from?' They answered, 'Your servants have come from a very distant country because of the fame of the Lord your God. For we have heard reports of him, all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth. And our elders and all those living in our country said to us, Take provisions for your journey, go and meet them and say to them, We are your servants, make a treaty with us. This bread of ours was warm when we packed it home on the day we left to come to you, but now see how dry and moldy it is. And these wineskins that we filled were new, but see how cracked they are. And our clothes and sandals are worn out by the very long journey.' The Israelites sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord. Then Joshua made a treaty of peace with them to let them live, and the leaders of the assembly ratified it by oath. 3 days after they made a treaty with the Gibeonites, the Israelites heard that they were neighbors living near them. So the Israelites set out on the third day, came to their cities, Gibeon, Kephera, Beerut, and Kiriath Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack them because the leaders of the assembly had sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. The whole assembly grumbled against the leaders. But all the leaders answered, "We have given them our oath by the Lord, the God of Israel, and we cannot touch them now. This is what we will do to them. We will let them live so that God's wrath will not fall on us for breaking the oath we swore to them." They continued, "Let them live, but let them be wood cutters and water carriers in the service of the whole assembly." So the leaders' promise to them was kept. Then Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and said, "Why did you deceive us by saying we live a long way from you, while actually you live near us? You are now under a curse. You will never be released from service as wood cutters and water carriers for the house of my God." They answered Joshua, "Your servants were clearly told how the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you the whole land and to wipe out all its inhabitants before you. So we feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this. We are now in your hands. Do to us whatever seems good and right to you." So Joshua saved them from the Israelites, and they did not kill them. That day he made the Gibeonites wood cutters and water carriers for the assembly to provide for the needs of the altar of the Lord at the place the Lord would choose. And that is what they are to this day. Palakpakan po natin ang Panginoon sa kanyang mga salita. Now, this is a very important passage because in this passage we have two important principles. But before going to that, for those of you who are not familiar with the situation, those of you who are new, except for those who grew in Sunday school, this is a familiar passage to you. That Joshua and the Israelites already crossed the Jordan. They already destroyed Jericho and Ai. And when the kings heard about what happened in Jericho and Ai, they gathered together to fight against the Israelites. But one group called the Gibeonites, sabi ng mga Gibeonites, "Wala tayong kaya dyan, hindi natin kaya yan. Kung natalo nila yung Jericho, natalo nila yung Ai, natalo nila yung dalawang hari, we have no chance." So what they did is they resorted to deception. They sent a delegation, although they live very near the Israelites, they sent a delegation, yung suot ng kanilang mga delegates ay mga luma na mga damit. And they brought food na panis na. Yung lalagyan ng tubig na nagka-crack na. The sandals were worn out to make Joshua and the Israelites believe that indeed they came from a distant place. When in fact, malapit lang, 3 days lang. Andun. So the motive of these people was not right. It was intended to deceive. And because of the motive that they have, they became a slave. They were under a curse. And there are two things I want us to understand from this passage. First, we can hide our motives from people. Pwede nating itago yung tunay na intensyon ng mga puso natin sa mga tao. But we can never hide our motives from God. We can deceive people, but we can never deceive God. Sooner or later, it will come out. Kahit ano pang gawin mo, when the motive is not right, sooner or later it will come out. I usually do not do this in my preaching, but for the sake of this message tonight, because I really want to emphasize this, that we should examine our motives, because we can hide our motives from people, but we can never hide our motives from God. And so I want to share this story to you. In 1959, Mount Apo Alliance Bible College, if some of you are familiar with one of our Bible schools in North Cotabato, this school was established in 1959. They got a piece of property. Doon na nila nilagay yung kanilang dormitories, ladies dormitory, men's dormitory, yung kanilang mga classrooms, yung chapel, yung faculty residences, and this property is about 9,000 square meters, almost 1 hectare, along the highway. So maganda yung location. And in 1979, 20 years after Maabsi was established, we were given the privilege to join the ministry of teaching Bible school students. So, 20 years na yung existence ng Bible school, saka pa kami nag-join sa kanila. And we ministered there until in 1992, I was given the privilege to be the president of the Bible College. So, in 1992, nung ako'y naging presidente doon, the first thing I did was to look at the records. Tiningnan ko yung record ng school. And I discovered na ito palang school na ito that existed since 1959, occupying a piece of property, wala palang title yung lote. So sabi ko, kung walang title, pwede silang paalisin. Technically, they are informal settlers. Huwag na lang nating tawaging squatter. Kasi walang title. But they are occupying the piece of property. So I went to the Bureau of Lands. And it happened one of the officers in the Bureau of Lands was an alliance. So kinausap ko siya, sabi ko, Ma'am, may problema yung school. Matagal na pala yung school dyan, walang title yung lupa. Anong pwede nating gawin? And she told me, Pastor, may problema talaga. Because religious organizations cannot apply. Kasi yung lugar na yon, free patent. Yung mga lupa doon. And bawal sa religious organizations to apply. So paano? Paano ma-title yung lupa in the name of the school or in the name of Kamakop? Sabi niya, Pastor, kayo na lang po ang mag-apply. You apply it in your name. Sabi ko, hindi ba delikado yun? Sabi niya, hindi, kasi hindi man bawal na private individual mag-apply, huwag lang yung religious organization. Pero kailangan, after 5 years, after the title is granted to you, 5 years later, pwede mo nang i-donate to the Kamakop. Oh, sabi ko, pwede naman pala. Pero sabi niya, you go to the barangay captain and get his signature. So I went to the barangay captain, and that barangay captain happened to be an alliance also. Yung kanyang mga lolo diyan na namatay. And sabi ko sa kanya, Brad, may problema yung school, kailangan ma-title yung lupa, pero hindi pwedeng i-title sa religious organization, kailangan munang applyan ng private person. Pwede ba kunin ko yung signature mo? Sabi niya, Pastor, alam mo, marami nang gusto mag-apply dyan. And I never gave my signature. Tiningnan niya ako. Pero sabi niya, dahil kayo ang naghingi, and you promised na 5 years later, you will give it to Kamakop, I will affix my signature. Kasi alam niya yung history ng lugar na yun. So after a few months, lumabas yung title, In My Name. So legally, akin yung lupa. But morally, it was not mine. Kasi matagal nang nag-exist yung school bago ako dumating. Hindi lang nila naasikaso yung pag-title ng lupa. It's in my name. So I told my wife, you pray that nothing will happen to me within 5 years. Kasi pag may nangyari sa akin, yung pangalan ko ang nasa titulo, baka yung mga anak natin, they will claim that this is theirs. In 1997, God called me to Pagadian City, and I was pastoring Pagadian City Alliance Church. Tumawag yung kaibigan ko sa Bureau of Lands sa Kidapawan City, yung tumulong sa akin na ma-title yung lupa. And he said, Pastor, may problema ka. Sabi ko, bakit? Anong problema ko? Sabi niya, di ba plano natin after 5 years, idodonate mo yung lupa? Sabi ko, opo. Sabi niya, hindi pala pwede na mag-donate ka na wala kang ibang property. Magagalit ang Bureau of Lands. They issued a title to you and you give it away, wala ka namang ibang lupa. Sabi ko, problema yan. And the temptation was, sige, hayaan mo na lang. Anyway, sa pangalan ko naman yun. That's a temptation, diba? But that was not the original intention. And when I was in Pagadian in 1997, in 95 to 97, someone came to me one day and brought a piece of paper. Tinignan ko, Certificate of Title, 200 square meters, in the name of Ira Lee Rosalita, Pagadian City. Pwede ko nang i-donate yung property doon kasi meron na akong ibang property dito sa Pagadian. And so in 2000, I executed a deed of donation, transferring that property from my name to the name of the Christian and Missionary Alliance para magamit ng school. Because it may be legally mine, because my name is there, but it is not mine. But there are times our motives are tested. Kung totoo ba na yung ginagawa natin ay para talaga sa Panginoon o yung ginagawa natin para sa sarili natin. And when your motives are good, God will never leave you. Lupa lang yun eh. Yung binigay sa akin sa Pagadian hanggang ngayon, hindi ko pa nabisita. Baka gusto nyong kunin yun, nasa inyo na. Hindi ko pa nabisita hanggang ngayon. But the title is still with me. Ewan ko anong sitwasyon na ngayon doon. But God used that para maibigay ko yung nasa Maabsi. And in 2007, God granted another small lot for me and my family inside Ebenezer Bible College campus. That's how God sees our motives. We can hide our motives from other people, but we can never hide our motives from God. Alam ng Lord yan. We can use legal means. Akala natin tama. But God sees the motives of our hearts. The second thing I would like to emphasize is that our motives today will not only affect us, it will affect our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the next generations. Itong Gibeonites, yung leaders ang gumawa ng desisyon, but the curse went through the different generations. All of them. Hindi umangat yung pamumuhay, woodcutters and water carriers the rest of their lives. As I am traveling in many places of the Philippines, I cannot help but thank God. Lord, ang ganda talaga ng Pilipinas. If you compare the Philippines with places in the northern hemisphere like Japan, Europe, Korea, America, napakaganda ng Pilipinas. Very fertile. Very fertile. May nagsabi nga, lahat ng itatanim mo sa Pilipinas, tutubo. Kahit yung lapis, itatapon mo, tutubo yan, may eraser pa. Ganyan ka-fertile ang Pilipinas. We have a very rich land. But why is it that millions of Filipinos are poor? Hindi ba yan mystery sa atin? We are living in a very rich land, and yet millions of Filipinos are poor. Nakita niyo yung sa TV na millions of sardines invaded somewhere in Zamboanga del Norte? Na yung mga tao sa barangay kumuha ng mga container, nilagay yung mga sardinas na gumagalaw-galaw doon sa dalampasigan. Hindi na yung mga mangingisda ang pumunta doon sa laot, yung isda na ang pumunta sa lupa. Ganyan kayaman ang Pilipinas. But why is it that many people are poor? I believe somewhere in the past, may mga ancestors tayo na gumawa ng katulad ng ginawa ng Gibeonites. They involved themselves in deception, in practices that were not pleasing against God. They incurred the curse, and the curse went on to the generations after them. Kaya hindi makaangat ang Pilipino. Yung mga dayuhan pumunta sa Pilipinas, yung mayaman. Bakit yung mga Pilipino na nandito ay mahihirap? The curse of the Gibeonites was not only for them, but it was even for the succeeding generations. Check your motives. Because if you do not check your motives, you think what you are doing is good, but in fact, in the eyes of God, they are not good. It is not only you who will suffer, even your children, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren after you. I will not name the name of the person, but this happened several years ago. Meron isang young boy from Lapuyan. Some of you are familiar with the place. This boy belonged to a poor family. But when he graduated from high school, he really decided to study and become a medical doctor. And so he applied in Silliman University as a working student. Kasi mahirap lang sila. When he arrived in Silliman and applied, tinanggap naman siya as a working student. First year in college, a very young boy. He was working and studying, working, studying. While he was working one day, doon sa loob ng CR, may nakita siyang wallet, may laman, maraming pera. Nung nakita niya yon, instead of putting the money inside his pocket, he went to the office and returned the wallet with the money. Ang hindi niya alam na yung may-ari pala ng wallet was an American visitor who had business with the college, university, nasa loob din ng opisina. Tuwang-tuwa yung may-ari ng pera. And right there, the president of the college and this American decided to give this boy full scholarship. 4 years, bachelor's, another 4 years in medical school until he graduated. He is the first medical doctor from Lapuyan. And because of his motive, the family today is greatly blessed by God. Not only in Lapuyan, but even here. Some of them are here in this church. From a very poor situation, the entire family experienced abundance and prosperity because of what was in the heart of that young boy several years ago. Brothers and sisters, We can hide our motives from people, but we can never hide our motives from God. And our motives today will not only affect us, but they will affect the succeeding generations. And it is my prayer that our hearts are right with God. To God be the glory.